I'm Stanley Sandler, the Command Historian for the John F. Kennedy Special Warfare Center and School, Fort Bragg. We have with us two veterans of detachment, OSS Detachment 202, who served in China in World War II, and we're going to have a videotaped interview with these gentlemen of their experiences. I'd like to ask each of them to identify themselves, and then we'll take it from there.
My name is Verlin Andrews. I'm from Lexington, Kentucky. I was with OSS in Kunming, China, and later in Chihkiang, China in 1944-45. I was a radio operator and cryptographer, gathering information for the Air Force, really. And that's what I did at both places. So I was out in front of the lines, not behind the lines.
Mr. Sevier?
My name is Joe Sevier, and I'm from Waynesboro, Tennessee. Went into service from Savannah, Tennessee. I was in OSS in China, and I was mostly in Kiangsi and Fujian provinces out near the Pacific Ocean, where we had men on coast watch.
Okay. It's always a good idea to begin at the beginning, so why don't we start out with how you got into OSS. You know, were you recruited, or did you hear about them and say that's what I want to join, or how did you get into the business in the first place?
I was in the Army Air Force and in the cadet program, and I had a perforated eardrum, and so I was a washout. So then I went into radio school and sent to Scottsville, Illinois, and before we completed our radio school, some gentleman from Washington was interviewing. He did not identify the program, but he just merely stated that it was a necessary thing, real important, and promised us if we were selected and if we agreed, we'd be overseas in 3 months.
And what time is this now? What's the date here?
This is about July 1944. And so they selected 2 classes. I believe there was about 80 in a class, isn't that right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And they wanted 24 people. So Joe and I here were selected in that 24 out of 2 classes. And eventually, well, shortly thereafter, they graduated us early so that we could get on with the training, went to Washington, D.C., and there we were known as the Orange Group. And we had probably something like 6 or 8 weeks training there. And then we were ready to go overseas. They did give us a furlough of 11 to 12 days, and then ready to go overseas. We did not know where.
So you and Joe trained together then?
Right.
Your background's the same as his?
Right.
I was impressed with the fact that after they took us, well, they told us they took the top people from Scottsville, and I'm not a top-notch man, but I did have code speed and a radio course when I was before I went in service. So when I got to Scottsville, I had a little advantage over a lot of the people the way I was able to get in it. And I'm pleased to say that they're probably the finest group of men that I've ever been associated with in my life. They sent us from Scottsville to the Congressional Country Club, where they kept us for possibly 2 weeks with to check our security. Had the FBI check on our security.
Was there any training at the country club?
Yes, we were trained.
Other than golf?
Well, there wasn't anything on the golf course at that time. We had some radio training. First, though, there was no training for us at the Congressional Country Club.
Mm-hmm.
After we were accepted and our security was checked, they loaded us in the back end of these big 6x trucks and pulled the curtain down, and all we knew was that we were an hour's drive out of Washington, D.C. And they'd take us out there, and we did receive a good bit of
Did you ever
training.
find out where you were outside?
I did, after we got back to the States.
That's
we were
Van
at a-
Hill?
We were at a
No. It was a Girl Scout camp.
Girl Scout camp, and
But no
they-
Girl Scouts?
yeah,
No golf, no Girl
no
Scouts?
golf, no Girl Scouts.
Where's the
They'd
golf?
take us into Washington and put us out Saturday afternoon, and then they would come back Sunday afternoon, and we'd go back into the woods, and it was strictly in the woods where we were there. When we had additional radio training, and then we had Major Fairbairn, who was chief of police of Singapore, and who was one of the toughest old nuts
You're
I
60
ever
years
saw in
old
my
now,
life.
yeah. Did he pull any of these tricks on you, like shake your hand, you wind up on the other
Yeah,
side of the room?
on the other
and,
side, and
The
but he-
Fairbairn knife?
yeah, I've still got my scar.
Do you really?
My Fairbairn knife. And, but then they took us in and to Washington one weekend, and after we got back, instead of going to our cabins, they took us to the mess hall and told us that they were going to send us, that we were going on our furloughs, and they were going to send us overseas.
We later learned that as quick as we got back from furlough, they were ready. I got there about 10 minutes until time, and they said, get back there and get prepared because you're shipping out the first thing in the morning overseas. There was a storm came up the East Coast, which is kind of common, and it was a big one, and it delayed us. Well, it was a good thing because we later learned that we were scheduled to land on the coast of France from a submarine,
Mm-hmm.
and that delayed all of that. So we stayed there probably what, week, 2 weeks,
Mhm.
and then was sent out, and still didn't know where we were going until, well, we got a couple of weeks in New York City and so forth. But after we got on the plane going over,
So you flew to the Far East then?
yes, they were in a
Yeah.
hurry.
But
to
you
get
know what?
somewhere.
Took us 31 days to get home.
C-54 or?
Me-32, yeah.
C-54s.
Yeah.
DC-4.
Uh-huh.
You must have had a lot of stops then?
Yeah, we stopped.
For refueling.
Went to Newfoundland, down to Azores,
Yeah, we
North
went
Africa. and-
Presque
That
Isle,
way.
Maine,
Yeah.
and Newfoundland, Azores, and on over to Casablanca, and it was cool the day we landed in Abadan, Iran. As I remember, it is 138 degrees. That's under the wing of the airplane.
In the shade, right.
In the shade.
So what time of the year, what month and year is this?
September, October, something like that.
Something like that.
44.
Yeah.
40.
We did have a hint that we were going to a warm climate since we had no winter clothing.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And,
And you found out when you got out at Abadan. It was
yes, we found out overseas.
138.
Then we flew
Calcutta.
across Calcutta, and everybody had them a quart ice cream cup, and most of them were filled up after we went through those air currents going across that desert. Airplane just go up and down.
Kept the same plane all the way
Yeah.
across?
I don't remember.
No,
I don't remember.
no, we from Casablanca, we flew to Cairo, but we had an emergency stop. I did.
Uh-huh.
We had an oil leak and we fell out of the sky and had it repaired at, well, Gaddafi's country.
Libya.
They fixed it, yeah. Went on to Cairo, and then we changed plane. Well, we had a sleep and then changed planes and went on into, well, Karachi.
Yeah, Karachi, and then
Right.
Calcutta,
Then
across Delhi. And the pilot circled the Taj Mahal, and I believe that's the prettiest building I ever saw in
Mhm.
my life.
That means we were on different planes because I didn't see it.
You didn't see it?
No, we got lost there. I believe you and I. Anyway, I don't know who was responsible, but they assigned us to SOS instead of OSS, and they lost us for about 5 days. We had top priority, and of course they lost that too. But
Yeah.
after we fussed enough, well, They said, oh, here.
So from India you go where?
We went to Calcutta, and then from there we went on a train up to Chabwa, about 700 miles.
Yeah.
You were on that trip, right?
Yeah. And you go to a river, and you get off and get on a boat, carry all your stuff over to the other side, and get on a narrow gauge railroad.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't have bridges. I mean, the railroad, different gauges.
We had several.
And so where'd the railroad trip take you then?
Chabwa,
Chabwa.
up in the foothills.
And
Himalayas.
we went through some leper colonies that were just out of this world. See, our people, we just don't know what we've got in this country.
That's for sure. That's for sure. One night that we were supposed to leave going over the hump, I'm not sure you was on that one or not, but we somewhere around 9 o'clock at night, we were to get on, and the pilot, as he should have, he checked his plane over thoroughly, and he found a gasoline leak, and so that was, our trip was postponed that night, and I was glad, because I didn't want to go through the hump at night anyway. And I'm glad he found it since it was there. Excuse me, but the next day, next morning, they had another plane.
C-46,
You know,
C-47?
C-46.
46s is usually what they flew the hump with. The thing that I remember about the hump, that it was about one of the easiest flights that I ever made. But you were very seldom away from where you could see where an airplane had gone down.
Really?
You could trail the hump.
The aluminum trail.
Yeah.
That must have built up your
was-
confidence.
yeah. We actually didn't fly over the mountains. We flew between them, circled around up there, and it was pretty all right. But sometimes we were close to the ground, and then a few seconds later we were way that's
So we put down what, Kunming then?
Kunming.
Okay.
The thing
Now,
that when we landed in Kunming, the thing that impressed me was the fact that the sergeant that opened the door was a fellow that I'd roomed with in Mobile, Alabama.
So you really had no idea what your mission was going to
No,
be yet, right?
not
You know,
at
just
that time.
OSS, China.
All we knew was all of
warm
us
climate.
were radio operators.
Okay, right. So when were you finally given the word and briefed and whatever?
Well, I was among the first to go to the field, and went out into, as I said, Gyeongsui and Chihkiang provinces.
Okay.
And we had men on coast watch out there. See, the main shipping lanes were between Taiwan and the mainland for the Japanese. And our people were not necessarily Americans, but they could send messages into us, and we could have planes over the target and nothing flat. And we were really doing business with their shipping.
Okay, improve my geography. Is Fujian a coastal province in China?
Yes.
Okay, so you were, well, that'd be Japanese occupied territory, wouldn't it?
Well, the Japs were all around.
Yeah, you were behind Japanese lines then.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, how did you get into Fujian then? Obviously you didn't fly in it as C-46.
Well, yes, we flew in, but then
In what?
When I got into, we had the 3 air bases there that were sending planes over the target, and Thanksgiving Day, Tokyo Rose said that the men that were at Sichuan, Namyang, and Kanjo air bases would eat Christmas dinner back in Kunming, back over the lines, you know. But we had 3 or 4 airports that were out in there.
But were they behind Japanese? The airports weren't behind Japanese.
Yeah, they were behind the lines too.
They must have been very small.
I mean, we think that we have earth-moving equipment in the United States today, you know, in a D9 and a D10 bulldozers. You ought to see what 20,000 Chinese coolies can do to hill in a few days.
Right.
Just like ants going, and one's going one way and the other going the other. They didn't go this way, they just went just like this. And they had what we called yo-yo sticks. with baskets on the end of them, and I'd say they were carrying maybe a bushel of dirt on each
One either side.
on
Yeah.
each one.
Mm-hmm.
Well, maybe no, I'd say probably on both of them. And but they might be carrying it for a mile.
But that's men, women, and children.
Yeah.
All, the whole family.
So now, where did you set up your radio stations? Would it be like in a farmhouse or in a
Well,
cave? Or?
Well, when Tokyo Rose was right, almost. But we were able to stay about till about the 16th of January.
The Japanese pushed you out of those there. They made their big
And
defense.
we left, I think the Japanese were 50, 60 kilos to the north coming after us. They got on down there and we blew up the field. And
After all that construction with the coolies, you had to blow up the field,
Yeah.
right?
Well, the field that I was talking about was one that was built further on over towards the ocean.
And the Japanese, did they capture that one too?
No, they never got it. But it was in a holy place. I mean, right down in it. You know, they could they'd have their sense of going from one place to another was not necessarily their instruments. They would have fires on top of these mountains, and this jet pilot would fly from one to the other. And I remember one night when I was still there at the 3 air bases, and incidentally, Chiang Ching-kuo, who was Chiang Kai-shek's son, was the governor of Gyeongsang province. Now he left a little before I did, but I did meet him, and so there were probably 15 or 20 of us that went on over in deeper, or on over towards the coast.
Towards the
we
coast,
were
yeah.
we were a few kilos south of Shanghai when the war ended.
Were you actually on the coast, or?
We were inland from the coast.
Well, you must have people right on the coast to watch
we had
Japanese
people
shipping.
on the coast. That
And they'd report back to you, and then you'd radio it back to...
My radio was JS1, and I would send in reports after having met with the Chinese on every morning. So the thing that really fascinated me yesterday in our tour around here was the radio equipment that they've got today. They've got a little. Now our TR2 transmitter was probably 10 inches by about 2 inches by maybe 8 inches.
That's pretty small for those days.
But that was small because it was all CW, continuous wave transmission, and we.
You generated that by
Yeah.
foot pedal.
No, I had a power plant most of the time. I have.
A generator, you mean?
Yeah, I had a generator.
And Mr. Anders, you had a foot-powered...
I was.
He was in the Kunming area.
Yeah, I was in Kunming. I went into the message center immediately there. We had a Radio Shack outside the base, and I did not operate a radio there, but they trained me to be a cryptographer, which took about a week, something like that. And I stayed in a message center there, operating, encoding and decoding all the way
So
through.
you'd receive messages like from Mr. Sevier,
Right,
and then would you transmit it to the 10th Air Force then?
14th.
14th Air Force. Flying
10th
Tigers.
was down in Burma then, 14th
10th was down in Burma.
Yeah, 14th.
14th was Flying Tigers of General Shinoda.
Right. Then I stayed there for, I say, roughly 3 or 4 months, and worked in the message center as a cryptographer. And while there, I did get to update all of the information in the super secret room for the underground in Siam, which is Thailand. And the manager of that was a fellow named Nicholas Smith, who was a colonel, and he's the author of Burma Road and Siam, the Underground Kingdom, which he wrote while we were there. But anyway, after that, they were going to send me out into north central China into communist territory by myself, like he did. But I would have been as far or further than he was, because it was that way up in there.
Yan'an.
And something happened, I don't know why, but anyway, I went out into south central China, into Chihkiang, and there I was a radio operator, and of course we were all cryptographers, and we fed information back to Kunming. We gathered from several teams like his all through China, daily, and so that was where I operated back and forth through them. One of the interesting things I had before I left Kunming was one afternoon, 6 or 7 o'clock, I was on duty, and we got a super, what do you call it, message that top priority and so forth. I mean, it was a short one, and of course I wasn't in Radio Shack, but they teletyped it to me right fast, and I decoded it and saw what it was. I typed it up, went out and got a Jeep right real fast and took it over to 14th Air Force headquarters, and as I say, it's about 7 o'clock at night. And I had never been in the headquarters over there before, but it was easy to find. I went right straight to it, and of course there's not much parking space there. Jumped out of that Jeep right in the front door and took it into some major, and I told him what I had. We had found 2 ships down in Quemoy. Canton. It was a coastal.
Well, Canton is further south.
South.
Quemoy is right across from Taiwan.
Okay. Anyway, there's 2 Japanese ships anchored, just come in there and anchored, and that was the message. Of course, we were providing 40th Air Force for targets. And I thought it was pretty important, and I felt real good because I was a big link in getting this to them. So I ran into this major and told him what it was right real fast after saluting and so on. He said, "By the way, is that your Jeep sitting out there?" And I said, "Yes." And he said, "You better move that thing before the general gets back." So I was at a high, then I was at a low, so that was my experience.
Well, maybe they hit the ships anyway.
Yeah, I hope they did. Yeah, I hope they did. So anyway, I stayed the rest of the war out in Chihkiang, and we had quite a battle because they were coming after us, and we so happened we had good weather there for about a week, and we tore up Jack really, and stopped them because
they never captured your base then.
No, but they were coming after
They were
us.
getting
They
close,
sure
huh?
were. Ooh, those planes would go out, and they'd go out and back in about 20 minutes, load up and go back, so they wasn't far. It was a very short distance.
You're probably prepared to evacuate then.
Well, we really didn't have any choice. Yeah, it was tough. It was tough, but the weather just broke in time to do it. But we used all of our gasoline and ammunition and everything else. So good thing it happened that way because we had nothing left. We'd been on foot after that.
Yeah. You couldn't have stopped them on the ground. You had no ground forces.
No.
You know, I think one thing yesterday here we saw these automatic weapons that they have today, and I believe that they told us that one of those round cartridges, about like they held about 150 bullets in it. And I remember one time that General Xiangquan, the general that I was with, started a major offensive with 4 bullets per man. That's the difference in then and
of course, the Chinese army had lots of men. So
the men, they could get more men, but the bullets were hard to come back.
Did you stay with coast watching, Mr. Sevier, right to the end?
Well, I was mostly with, after we got out in the field, I was mostly with General Xiangquan, who was the Chinese general, in a little town called Ningtu. Now, the other people that evacuated from Quanzhou were in a place called Chongqing, and I used to work that's Charlie George 5, and I used to work JS1 into Chongqing. General Xiangquan, if I remember it, had 3 Chinese armies.
So you were like a radio link?
Yeah.
Right.
And as I said before, when we go into town, he'd take the best house, and I'd get second
Second
force.
best.
We were around Ningtu most of the time.
What did we hear a lot about how poor the Chinese army was then, and so on. Stilwell's horrendous problems with
Yeah.
Chiang Kai-shek and so on. Was that your impression also? The Chinese army, corrupt, inefficient?
Well, I don't know. I almost had to be. Well, I kind of liked the Chinese. They were exceptionally good to me because I was the only American in there.
He was the only redhead in China, really.
Yeah, yeah.
How were your language skills?
Well, one of the finest people I ever knew in my life was my interpreter, a boy by the name of Maurice Ky, and I would have done anything in the world to get him to the States. And I asked another boy by the name of Hong Loy, who was from New York, how I could get in touch with Maurice, and he said, Joe says, if you love and respect Maurice, don't try it, because there's nothing, you'll just cause him trouble. You know,
Why was that?
The communists.
Oh, yeah.
And,
Did you have any contact with the Chinese communists while you were in that area?
well, I'm not sure. Someone said that General Shang Quan had 3 Chinese armies, and one of them was against the communists, and the 2 were against the Japs. But he never did tell me anything
No.
about the communists.
He's prepared for anything.
Yeah.
Did you come back? You come back to Kunming to get out of
Yeah.
China?
Mm-hmm.
Was the Civil War started when you came?
No. When I got back, as the war ended, one of our boys that was out in there called me on the radio and said, Joe says, and he was son of a tobacco salesman, and it would surprise you how many sons of tobacco salesmen. Most of our boys were sons of missionaries or tobacco salesmen. One was Captain West was one of the let's see, he was a Max Factor representative in China, in Shanghai. Now, Shanghai is just as modern as any city.
You're talking about Chinese now, not
Yeah.
not Americans. Okay.
And no, they were Captain West was another operator, and well, anyway, Bell called me and said, Joe, will you go in Shanghai with me? And I said, well, yeah, I guess so. I said, I want to see my mother and father and sister. This was when they first started talking. And so we got permission to go into Shanghai. The only stipulation was that we would not accept any surrenders, because if you accept a surrender, you're responsible for whoever surrenders to you.
So this is after the Japanese had
This is after
agreed
the
to take
Japanese
it.
started the thing. And so we went on up north and we got into Shanghai.
How'd you get there?
We went by boat, paddle boat, walked, jeep, just any way you could get
Yeah,
there.
yeah.
And so when we got into Shanghai, we went to his former home, and his parents were in a concentration camp, and we went to the concentration camp.
Now, why would he's American, you're saying?
He's American.
And so his parents
Well,
were turned by the Japanese.
See,
yeah.
the Japanese had control of Shanghai. In fact, they had control of Shanghai when we went in there. And his father had died, and we went in the concentration camp, and we got his sister and his mother out and took them to the Park Hotel. And after we'd been there a day or two, we went to the roof, and it reminded me, it's very similar to the old Peabody Hotel in Memphis. Just a beautiful place. And we were up there, and the band said that they were going to play a song that they had heard from the United States. and they played Sentimental Journey.
Oh, yeah.
And I tell you what, for 20 years after that, every time I ever told that story, tears would almost come in my eyes because
Yeah.
from remembering.
I thought you might have said White Christmas. That was another song
Yeah,
that was
yeah.
popular, but you didn't know about it till after the war, yeah. So, you were in Kamo then throughout right to the time of the Japanese surrender.
Yeah.
Right? Okay. How did you? When were you demobilized, and how did you leave? Then what route did you?
Well, from Shanghai, there was we went back to Kunming, back to Calcutta, and got on a boat.
The boat this time.
This 31 days.
31.
Of the most miserable days of my life. I'm not a great boatman.
Was it an old Liberty ship? You remember?
It was General Greeley, Horace Greeley.
Yeah, Army Transport.
10 rows of men.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, if you rolled over, you punched whoever was up ahead over you. 10 rows of men.
And no air conditioning on the ship.
No,
either.
no.
You just sweated. Well, how about yourself, Mr. Anders?
Well, as the war ended, we had our greatest threat because we was expecting the communists to come in and take all
Before
our
you get
equipment.
to that, did you actually get the message saying, the bomb has been dropped, the Japanese have surrendered?
Yes.
Yes.
How did you handle that? Did you also jump in your Jeep and...
No, we sat tight where we were because we just got it over the radio, the news about it, and
You didn't get a special message flash or anything?
no, it just came over that way.
I imagine that we would have known it before the Chinese because of their methods of transportation. I remember very well how it happened. I was in my house and my interpreter had gone to the Chinese opera that night. And there was a newspaper reporter came in, and I see now he was holding up his fingers, and of course the letter V is not in the Chinese vocabulary.
This was a Chinese reporter.
Yeah. And he was saying, "Wickwee, wickwee."
Oh, yeah.
And I didn't know what, he just lucky he didn't get shot because I slept with that 45 under my pillow all night. And, but I did know him. And I couldn't tell whether he was inebriated or crazy or anything while I had met him before. And,
Of course, that was a sign during World War II anyway, victory.
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay, well, Mr. Anders, then you're saying you're...
Yeah, we
wrapping
got the news over the radio and found out they said they dropped a bomb, an atomic bomb, and everybody looked and said, "What's an atomic bomb?"
Yeah.
You know, we never had heard of it. And a little later it got to saying, "Well, it's made in Oak Ridge, Tennessee." And I said, "Well, hoop-de-doo, that's only about 70 miles south of my home." And I didn't know it. I knew they were doing something down there.
You knew there was something going on down there, huh?
Knew they were doing something, but
didn't know what it
we
was.
did not know what it was.
And they were going to tell you.
And I had relatives working there, and they didn't know what it was either.
Uh-huh.
So, but anyway, they had surrender officially acceptance, I guess, various places, but they had one in Chihkiang. They flew in some Japanese officials in there and surrendered. I don't know what segment, but yeah, they were there. Then we had a kind of a vacation. We didn't have much to do. We just sat around waiting for transportation to get out. I guess I was probably there for a month after that, before they got transportation to get us out, and we came back to Kunming, arriving at Kunming at about 6 o'clock a.m., and at 6:10, the communists come into Kunming to take over. So we had civil war. We passed the troops on the way from the airport into our quarters. Then we were in our quarters for probably a week.
Now, the troops you passed were the communist or nationalist troops went out to meet them?
It's one or the other because
Yeah.
they were marching to meet each other.
Yeah.
And
That's soon after the war, then. They were
Oh,
starting
yes,
to mobilize.
well, see, when we first heard this, then they armed us to the teeth down in Chihkiang because they expected the communists to come in and take everything we had there. And we were assigned to protect the bridges and stuff, trying to let the others out. Then we would have marched to the coast, which is about 400 or 500 miles, I guess. That was the plan because they couldn't get us out. So it worked out they didn't need to. But we back to Kunming when we got there, the Civil War had broken out, and the front lines was right along our compound because I could sit there and watch the boys laying there shooting across the rice paddy at the others.
The communists were moving into Kunming also.
Oh yes, right. And they told us, and of course we did. They said, "You stay in your compound."
Don't get involved.
They had the officials come in there and say, "Right here," and we stayed there until we got permission to leave, which was 4, 5, 6 days later. Then flew out of there back to Calcutta and got on a boat, and I went the other way. I was on the Marine Raven, and I came back through the Pacific.
And how long did your trip take?
32 days.
That's pretty fast for that part of it. Those Liberty ships like 62 days.
Yeah. If we'd had good weather and good luck all the way, we were planning on landing at Tacoma, Washington on December the 7th, which would have been a Memorial Day. We got there December the 11th.
At least you're home in time for Christmas.
Right. About 10 minutes, yeah. I made it. So, and that's about it. We did come back through Philippines, Bataan, and Singapore, and we stayed there for a couple of days. Out in the bay, we didn't get it out.
Yeah.
And mostly it's just a big trip on water for a long time.
I can imagine. Do you have any lessons that could be learned from your experiences by Special Operations Forces today in terms of languages or commo or working with native peoples? Anything that you ran across that you think could be passed on to our people?
He was more exposed than I was because I was at
Yeah, that's right. You were working with them. You know, the only one there.
Well, one big problem I had was I went about 3 months without getting any mail. Another thing, I ate with chopsticks all the time, and my cook had been the chief cook in the British Embassy in Hong Kong, and
you must have eaten well then.
I ate pretty good if you can eat good in China. I never will forget, they fixed some of the best soup I ever ate in my mouth. I just made one mistake. I asked them what it's made out of, and they said chicken blood. And from then on, I just ate. I didn't try to find out what I was eating because it's easier not to know.
For our troops. Okay, don't ask the native peoples what it's from. It might be monkey meat or chicken blood or.
I'm really impressed with what I've seen down here. Of course, it's not too many years from we were supposedly a good fighting team back in those days. But these boys are just out of this world here today. And I've been impressed with, I met General Davis and General Daly, and then the commanding general, General Dowling. Is that Dowling? I met 3 of them since I've been here, and had another OSS reunion that we had in Washington.
Yeah, we're trying to keep that thread from what you people, laying the foundations and learning lessons right through to our own time.
This has really been a learning experience down here these 4 or 5 days that we've been here, and another day or 2 to go.
Well, it's been learning for us too.
Yeah.
I think one of the interesting things about what I learned over there is that I live in a German Lutheran mission, which had walls all around it and had the church inside, and it was a complete community. And actually, we took over the people who worked for this mission, the cooks, the caretakers, the whole bit. We took care of the whole thing, and they had family, small children right on up. And of course, we lived with those daily, and we found playing with those kids was just as normal as playing with kids back here. They were different personalities, different everything, and we had a good time with them.
Just a Chinese family?
Right,
Yeah.
Chinese family.
Lutheran.
So, some of them, were withdrawn, some of them were outgoing, some of them were playful.
I tell you something that impressed me too. On several occasions, I stayed in Italian Catholic missions when we were at war with Italy. Stayed in German Catholic missions when we were at war with Germany. And I visited a Father Dermody, who was at the Catholic mission in, I don't remember exactly where it was. But when the Doolittle Raiders made their raid on Japan, one of the planes was shot down and came down, and Father Dermody and the other Catholics took care of the pilot. And I have a picture at home that I made. The only thing that's left of that mission is the walls and weeds growing up inside of it where the Japs had come on in and
Destroyed it.
Destroyed it.
Did they kill?
They didn't kill that Father Dermody. They killed people in there, but
He escaped.
he was made. And then there were two Swiss ladies that they were Protestants. They were real nice. I stayed with them. So going around and these people with religious backgrounds, you've got to admire them to go to places
You bet.
like Kansas, like China to do it.
You know how we recruited missionaries into OSS.
Yeah, there were several sons of missionaries in there. But it seemed to me like the predominant people were tobacco sales.
Yeah.
My quarters in Chihkiang was nice because this church was there, and my room was in a corner of the church, and in other words, right beside the pulpit, and so we were living pretty good
In the church. Yeah.
and they had services there, and they'd wake us up every Sunday morning. I couldn't understand the words, but I could understand the
The sentiments and the
tunes.
music.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like we sing. Yeah.
Yeah. This was a German Lutheran.
Right.
Yeah.
But at that particular time, we were at war with the Germans.
And Italians. Well, thank you very much, gentlemen.
Yeah.
Really appreciate sharing your experiences with us.
Glad to do it. Yes. Sure.
Enjoyed it.
Mhm.
We feel that we're fortunate to have been in an organization like the OSS, and we weren't like the ordinary GI. We had to improvise for ourselves. But the American soldier has a pretty good batting average.
Like that train ride we took up through there, and they didn't give us any food, so we had to commandeer some, didn't we, on the way up? Because we hadn't been on our own before. So that's the only thing to do.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was something.
Okay.
It was something.
They're finished now.